As part of the Rubin Museum's annual Brainwave series, we are pleased to present a conversation between the director of Looking for a Lady with Fangs and Moustache, Khyentse Norbu, and Dr. Richard Davidson, founder of the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Madison, Wisconsin, and also a member of the Rubin's Advisory Council.
We are very interested in the nature of awareness. We regard awareness as something that every human being is endowed with. And our challenge is often recognizing that we have this quality, recognizing that awareness is with us continuously. Also another element that I think is relevant to your work is the understanding that we glean from science that our realities are constructed by our minds. And the worlds in which we live are really a product of our minds. When we dream, we can have very vivid experiences and can react emotionally, and yet these are entirely constructions of our mind. And the amazing fact is that our waking life is really the same as our dream life, according to our understanding of how the mind and the brain works to construct reality. So maybe I can stop here and just have you reflect a little on how these elements might be conveyed or depicted in your work.
Wow. That is really a big subject and very complex. The Tibetan word sem chen, or sem for the mind, but for the sentient being, they use the word sem chen. The word chen is kind of interesting because it actually implies a possessive, one that has mind. So it implies that there is something that has mind. Now, generally, many of the Mahayana Buddhists, and especially in the Vajrayana, and most especially, there's a Tibetan Buddhist school called Nyingma tradition, which is the oldest translation. They would actually insist that this mind has to also go, meaning this mind is the hindrance to so-called, liberation. I think the best word we can come up at the moment, as you yourself use, awareness. I mean, that's the best word we can use, but the moment we use this word awareness, immediately our habit seems to imply on something subjective and objective. Mm-hmm. And this, again, out of lack of word, cognizance, or this awareness that the Tantric Buddhism seems to be talking about, is really not a subjective, not an objective. It's because by the time we talk about subject and object, already we are talking about something quite gross. Now, of course, this is very difficult. I mean, the whole Buddhism, from the Sharvakayana to the Vajrayana, there are many different ways to establish this or analyze this, and then not just establish and analyze, but even practice. In fact, as when Buddha was asked, what is mind? He gave two contradictory with three statements with a two contradiction. He said, mind, there is no mind, mind is luminous. In the first sentence, he seemed to say that there is mind. And then immediately after that, he said, there is no mind. But right after that, he said, mind is luminous. So these kind of, I don't know, paradoxical or contradictory kind of way to establish mind is really, really complicated, I think. One of the, and this is where I think many modern people might find it difficult, but one of the most cherished and revered method to really experience this non-subjective, non-objective mind is through what we, at the moment in English, they translate the word in terms of devotion, like belief. But of course, this is very difficult for people who are who cherishes empiricism, logic, so on and so forth. But I would say that this devotion or the it's actually a little bit misunderstood, because fundamentally, we human beings, I mean, generally all sentient beings, there's nothing else apart from belief. We are believing in something. That's all we have. It's just some beliefs are more, let's say, sophisticated than the other.
I am both a scientist and also a Vajrayana practitioner. So it certainly helps to have a little taste of experience to do my science. So we can ask, I think, better questions. If you've had no taste of the experience, it's very difficult to ask the right kind of questions.
We need more people like you.
I think there are more in the next generation, so it's very encouraging. And
because one thing, I don't know, maybe because my knowledge about science and scientists is very limited. But one thing I have been sort of noticing, there's something so great about science, is that they never come to conclusion. I mean, they never say this is the final decision. Probably this is probably one of the biggest difference between Buddhism and science, because Buddhism has come to a decision. All compounded things are impermanent. All all kleshas, dukkha, all phenomena are emptiness. That's it. But the scientists are, let's say we are going to research, let's see, next 10 years, we will maybe find out something else.
But also, isn't there a sutra in Buddhism that basically says that we shouldn't take the words of the Buddha on faith, but rather we should experience them ourselves, and that only if we experience them ourselves should we really have the faith and the devotion.
Yes, of course. That's a technique. That is a method. But Buddhists have to come up with some sort of a view, right? Or some sort of otherwise it will float around.
Yeah. But, you raised, Rinpoche, the phenomenon of devotion, which I think is really important. And one of the things that is true of the science of meditation, which is really comparatively very new and is approaching only a very small fraction of meditation. What scientists study in the West is just a tiny sliver. But one of the there are two things that you mentioned, which I think are extremely important that have received very little study. The first is devotion, which I think is so important in developing a kind of confidence, and not an arrogance, but a confidence to basically keep going on the path. And I think that one of the challenges in the modern dissemination of Dharma in the West is that, and one of the challenges of using science to help to promote it is the lack of devotion. The devotion is not a central part of this way of conveying it. And I think that because of that, many people at the very early stages of practice have a difficult time really sticking with it. And I think that devotion is something that could be enormously helpful. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about ways to depict devotion and in a way that would be accessible to a non-Buddhist.
Right.
Because it really is something basic, it's part of our basic human nature that we have the capacity for devotion.
Well, I think when the concept of devotion or the tepa is first presented to the outside of India or Tibet, I think from then on, I think the packaging went a little bit wrong. This is my personal opinion. Okay, this is again very complicated. Okay, so sometimes I joke with some of my friends, Western friends, that I said that in the West, the history in the West, there's a rationalism, right? The romanticism, rationalism, enlightenment, all that. What West, if Chandrakirti or Nagarjuna of that kind of stature person came, then that would really help, because I think I feel that what happened is a rationalism, and then it stopped there. It should have gone a little bit further. What I'm saying is based on something what I think Saraha said when he defined devotion as a trust in cause, condition, and effect. So that's actually, at glance, it's a very scientific. So, okay, of course, we don't want irrational devotion. I mean, irrational even on the relative world. So first, we need to sort of acquire rational devotion. Okay, you see a smoke, has to be a fire, that kind of devotion. Inferential still, but it works. It bears fruit. Then what we need is a courage to go beyond devotion. We don't want to, of course, we don't want irrational devotion, but we also don't want rational devotion, because rationalism, logic, relying on some sort of something that makes sense is very scary, because it's very, very conditional, and you can't really trust that. So this is where I think when we talk about a devotion, somehow this part, because at the end of the day, devotion is just a tool, isn't it? It's not the end. And I think when we promote devotion, it ends up hearing it as if it is the end.
Yes. Yeah, that's really important. That's really important. Another thing that you mentioned is the view. And in Western scientific research on meditation, we don't talk about the view. And I think it's very unfortunate, because I think that the little that I have gleaned as a practitioner, the view is so important. And without the view, as you say, you cannot make sense of your experience in the same way. And so one question, and this is actually a question we've talked to His Holiness the Dalai Lama about, and that is how to convey the view in a way that is, quote, secular, in a way that could be appealing to everyone, to be more universal.
I think that is, I don't know, probably I'm being too optimistic, but I think that is possible, because even though sometimes the Buddhist view, when it is packaged in the context of like things like Madhyamika, Tantra, then it becomes so technical and mechanical and philosophical and intellectual. But in reality, it is so simple. In fact, some of the tantric masters, many tantric masters, actually all the great ones, they say that the challenge of the Buddhist view, the real challenge of the Buddhist view is it's too simple. That's why we just cannot, accept it. But I think it is possible. For instance, like even in our mundane world, people believe that, appearance is deceiving. What you see is not really what it is. These are good foundation. I think
Exactly.
we really need to cultivate these things. Of course, the views on impermanence, nothing will really satisfy you 100%. Those things are easier. But I think here we are talking about more the ultimate view. The ultimate view, shunyata, is really, I think, for the lay people, if they can really understand everything is just your opinion, everything is just your idea, your projection, nothing is as how it appears, you are, I think, quite close. So I think we can use these kind of language.
Yes, I love that. I really love that. And this is where the science, I think, the basic science can be really helpful, because we understand now that our perception, we don't perceive entities that have some independent existence out there. That's not how the mind and the brain work.
Right.
And our experience is entirely constructed. And it's, dreams are a really great example, because we can have a dream and have, a real emotional response to the dream. We can actually measure changes in our body as if it were, quote, real. And the fact is, that's how it works all the time, not just in our dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And so here, I think we can helpfully use the science to help convey that aspect of the view, which I think really could be important.
Yes. Do you think science or scientists can actually help develop the notion of paradoxy? For instance, something is there, but at the very same time, it's not there. Like in the Heart Sutra, we say form is emptiness. Emptiness is form immediately. It's not like a second, even though when we read it, it's a second later, but the very form is emptiness this emptiness is also a form. So like the dream that you are mentioning, it's there, it really moves you, it makes you scared, it makes you laugh. But as you dream, it's also not there.
Right.
But not just dream, like a rainbow, like a reflection of your face in the mirror. And then, of course, Now the hardest part is this dream. I'm talking to you and you are talking to me. Now it's there, but it's not there. Yes. I guess Zoom context is easier to.
Yes, it is. Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. It's it is challenging, but you know, the scientific evidence on this is quite compelling. And one of the areas where it can be, I think, clarified very helpfully is with perceptual illusions. I'm sure you've seen these at some point, Rinpoche, but there are some very famous perceptual illusions where you can look at something and from one perspective, it looks like two faces that are looking at each other. And from another perspective, it's like a vase, a flower vase.
Right. Yes.
And so it's both of these simultaneously.
Yes.
And this kind of perceptual illusion, I think, can be very helpful. And the fact is that there are no special, there's no special event occurring in our mind, in our brain during a perceptual illusion. It's the same that's happening all the time. And so when a person has a direct experience of one of these illusions, it's a mini awakening. They can directly perceive that there can be something that is both at the same time.
Right. I think, and I think to some extent, people do like and enjoy experience this. Sort of, it's there, but it's not there. Probably it's not the right thing for me to say in this sort of public domain, but you know, why people drink alcohol? Why people use drugs? Because I think it gives them this sense of it's there, but it's not there. Then suddenly, based on that, you gain strange confidence and, you know, sort of couldn't carelessness and sort of freedom, I guess that's the correct word. But then, of course, substance, you are relying on a substance. Mm-hmm. So then you end up getting hooked or addicted to the method.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Yeah, you know, one of the things that I think you've explored in some of your films, which I'd love to ask you about that's related to this, is death and dying and bardo. You know, the way we think of bardo as a scientist, it's kind of like a gap.
Right.
It's a momentary gap when the normal constraints on our perception are suspended. It even could just be a brief moment. It could be like a sneeze.
Right.
But those are like mini bardos that provide an opening where
Yes.
there are other ways of seeing.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, again, bardo are really difficult to sort of present, but you know, you are talking about bardo, something in between, yes. Right? Bardo, yes. Something in between. I think what people also need to know is when we talk about in between, you are talking about two things, right? Like this, and then in between. And in the Bardo teachings, it is clearly stated that this too actually does not exist.
Right, right.
So yes. This Bardo in between is just another like illusion. But you know, I think you know, this is another thing. The word like illusion, it somehow makes listeners. The moment you hear this word illusion, oh, it's not that important, or it's sort of, But it is not. Illusion is very powerful. It is so, controlling, and wow, that's not that easy, illusion.
Yeah, no, it's really true. And in some deep sense, that's all we have.
Yes.
I mean, unless one is awakened, but short of that, there's just illusion.
Yes. And for many practitioners, and once, as long as you are on the path, even the awakening is a very sophisticated illusion. And this is where you need your practice need to always pull the rug out of beneath your feet, your master. I don't know. This is difficult.
Yes.
But at the same time, it is doable. It's very doable, and it's, people climb mountains, and people do all sorts of things that are, really difficult. Compared to that, this is actually much more blissful and beneficial, and I don't know. But the force of materialism is very strong. So, not everybody is attracted to this journey, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that the pull of materialism and the confusion about what produces happiness
Right.
Is really such a critical influence in modern culture. There's a famous psychologist who wrote a book called Stumbling on Happiness. And what he meant by the title is that people have all kinds of ideas about, what will make them happy, getting, a new car or a new house, or and the research actually, it convincingly shows that it doesn't work. There have even been studies in lottery winners, who win just a huge amount of money. And what happens is that in the next month, they show a boost in their happiness. And then not only do they come back to baseline, but most of them go actually suffer much more, end up suffering much more.
Right. Of course. Well, that's what Buddha said 2,500 years ago. Nothing,
yes.
Everything is just dukkha.
So on the topic of belief, we have certain ways of studying that from a scientific perspective. And there have been some really intriguing findings around, particularly around placebo, where a person is led to believe that a pill or something they're given or some procedure is going to have a certain impact on their body or their mind. And it gives us a context in which to study the power of belief. And so there are some really extraordinary examples. One of the most powerful examples actually is from research that's been done with Parkinson's patients, who have this movement disorder, Parkinson's disease. And there is a drug which is used in medicine to treat some of the symptoms of Parkinson's. and it involves, it's called L-DOPA, and it stimulates a chemical in the brain that is important for movement, and it temporarily improves some of the symptoms. It's not a cure, but it temporarily improves some of the symptoms. And so what was done in this experiment is these were patients who had experience taking the L-DOPA, and they were given a placebo. They were given a sugar pill, and they were told that this is L-DOPA. This is a new and particularly powerful form of L-DOPA. And then they took the sugar pill, and that's all it was, a sugar pill. And not only did it have a dramatic effect on their tremors, on their behavior, but it actually changed their brain chemistry. It actually changed their level of dopamine in specific parts of the brain that we can measure with a brain scan. And so it had this really remarkable and specific effect. And so the thing that's so interesting about this is it's not simply a generic belief, but the specific belief actually induces a specific change in the brain and the body. And so it raises really interesting questions about the power of belief. And it's a helpful, I think, illustration for people to understand that our beliefs really change how we view the world, how we take in information, how our body responds. It changes everything. And it's just a change in our mind. And this goes back to some things we were talking about earlier in terms of really fundamentally in terms of emptiness and impermanence. And so, yeah, and so I wonder what your thoughts are about that, and how you approach the topic of belief in some of your work.
Oh, I like the word placebo. Actually, I have in one of the book I have written, I have mentioned that whole what we call Dharma, spiritual path, Buddhism, is actually a placebo. And that's not actually me just saying that. This has been said by the masters of the past. The whole path is a placebo. I try to depict that even on my film. This, there's a character, monk, who actually sort of always bugs Tenzin. Well, this is a little difficult to portray, but anyway, supposedly all of this is the monk bluffing. You are going to die, so, but it made Tenzin worried, and afterwards, after the post-worrying, post-paranoia, so to speak, Tenzin sort of felt really alive and really, appreciated life.
So thank you so much, Rinpoche. It's been an honor to spend these minutes with you, and thank you for all you're doing on this planet. And I have the aspiration that we meet again in person at some point in our lifetimes. So it's been really an honor. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for really bringing up very important, difficult, complex subjects. But I think that's the only way we have to sort of begin.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.